We know that if we do not sell, the white man may come with guns and take our land. How can you buy or sell the sky, the warmth of the land? The idea is strange to us. If we do not own the freshness of the air and the sparkle of the water, how can you buy them? Every part of this earth is sacred to my people. Every shining pine needle, every sandy shore, every mist in the dark woods, every clearing, and humming insect is holy in the memory and experience of my people. The rocky crests, the juices of the meadows, the body heat of the pony and man, all belong to the same family. So when the great chief in Washington sends word that he wishes to buy our land, he asks much of us.
I have heard that you intend to settle us on the reservation near the mountains. I don't want to settle. I love to roam over the prairies. There I feel free and happy, but when we settle down, we grow pale and die.
I was born upon the prairie where the winds blew free and there was nothing to break the light of the sun. I was born where there were no enclosures and where everything drew a free breath. I want to die there and not within walls.
And so we've come to this frontier. Next, we'll see what happens when we go to the Grand Canyon, when we move on to Wounded Knee and the Custer battlefield, and we tell the story up to date in this, the War Against the Indians.
Navajos in their religious saying that they consider that the earth is their mother and the sun is the father. See, the sun sends powerful energy from the sun and it hits them.
The War Against the Indians has a monumental setting and a place of almost mystic majesty in the American Southwest. The Grand Canyon, a place to contemplate history. The writer Samuel Butler said, "God cannot alter the past, but historians can." Now, we have been told and retold the European version of the land and legends of how we came to be here. History is a set of lies agreed upon, said Napoleon. And the poet William Carlos Williams added, "History begins for us with murder and enslavement, not with discovery." The raw myths of our past. But the geography cannot be molded into convenient historical truth. The caves are still there, parched by the sun, a permanent record. There have been people living here since before time was recorded. Philosopher and artist Carl Gorman.
The Navajos call him Anasaza. Anasaza is a Navajo word. Ana means stranger. Zazi, Saza, that means strange relatives. Anasaza.
Pueblo historian Joe Sando. Just how long ago was it that the Pueblo was first seen here?
In this area, the farthest that we've been able to decipher is 10,000 for many years, but recently some professor found some material which indicates 40,000 years ago. That is down south of here because the Pueblo people came from the south. And we came out from the Mexico maybe the Tihuacan area of Mexico after the cultivation of corn, which was 34,000 BC. And after corn was cultivated, that made it possible for people to begin to travel, take corn with them.
The cliff dwellers left their caves, an ancient version of solar heating, and moved to villages. Why? A mystery. It was about the time of the arrival of the Spaniards, the conquistadors. Governor Herman Agoya in his village of San Juan.
About 500 years ago, you would have seen two-story homes, maybe 200 to 300 people here, and you would have seen my ancestors living a very simple life, earning or surviving through farming and hunting and celebrating life through their ceremonies.
With the arrival of the Spanish, the brutal tone of battle was set from the start, says Joe Santo.
Like any European, the attitude at the beginning was that they were going to dominate and do away with our culture and substitute and give us their culture. But it didn't last because they instituted some of their programs that they had in Europe, like the Encomienda and the Repartimiento. And they supplemented another idea there that they would do away with our religion and give us theirs. And the Pueblos took it until 1680. In 1680, they revolted and threw the Spaniards out for 12 years. And when the Spaniards came back in 1692, it was with a different attitude. Consequently, today we are the last of the Native Americans of North America who maintain a greater part of their culture as a result of that expulsion of the Spaniards at that time.
And how did the Navajo get along with the Spanish?
They used to call them Hispanic, and they were really friendful. But afterwards, the army came, the Spanish army came, and they were the rough one. So the Navajo started fighting them, and they fought for about 200 years. They never could conquer the Navajos. They used this hit and run fighting technique. And the Navajos thought that was the end of it. They thought this was their land and they were going to live here peacefully. But the government, the United States government took over the Navajo land again.
The United States government calls it manifest destiny. It is the spring of 1862, 370 years after Columbus, a period of almost continuous war. The American government sends in General James Carleton with stars on his shoulder to command the Bluecoats, the California column. He has a great passion for their land, and like Columbus, for its gold. These are Carleton's words.
The princely realm, magnificent pastoral and mineral country. As for the Navajos, they are wolves that run through the mountains and must be subdued. The men are to be slain wherever they can be found. The women and children may be taken as prisoners.
With his lieutenant, Kit Carson, once a friend of the Indians, Carleton pursues and starves the Navajos. The Navajos cannot believe that Carson condones scalping, which was introduced by the Spanish and which they consider to be very savage.
Carleton He was stationed in Santa Fe, and he was told to get into this Navajo country and see what we could do. And he was one of these guys that really was crazy for gold. And he wrote back to, he was he toured the Navajo country, a certain part, and he wrote back to Washington and told them that the Navajos were sitting on precious stone. And what he meant was gold. And the only way we could get to these precious stones is to get the Navajos off their land. Well, they finally drove the Navajos to Fort Sumner and held them there 4 years. From Albuquerque is 300 miles due south. They lost quite a number of, especially older people, you know. That was his idea, so that he said that we could get to the gold, or that precious stone, he said, to get the Navajos off the land.
But the Navajo made peace pretty early on with the American government, right?
Oh yeah, they signed a treaty. I don't know how many treaties the Navajos signed with the government, but they're all broken.
A requiem is said for the American intrusion and the long, mad march on which so many will die by Chief Manuelito, and a sacred prayer.
In a sacred manner I live, to the heavens I gazed. In a sacred manner I live, my horses are many.
The Navajos will return to their land, fewer in number, with less territory. The famed warrior Geronimo will speak for his warriors, the Apache.
I was praying to the light and to the darkness, to God and to the sun, to let me live quietly there with my family. I don't know what the reason was that the people should speak badly of me. Very often there are stories in the newspapers that I am to be hanged. I don't want that anymore. When a man tries to do right, such stories ought not to be put in the newspapers. There are very few of my men left now. They have done some bad things, but I want them all rubbed out now, and let us never speak of them again. There are very few of us left. When I was young, I walked all over this country, east and west, and saw no other people than the Apaches. After many summers, I walked again and found another race of people had come to take it. How is it? Why is it that the Apaches wait to die? That they carry their lives on their fingernails? They roam over the hills and plains and want the heavens to fall on them. The Apaches were once a great nation. There are now but few, and because of this, they want to die and so carry their lives on their fingernails.
Geronimo will die a prisoner of war, and the battle was not yet over for others and elsewhere on the great island of North America. There have been many poems, songs, paintings, and films about the battle that took place here at Little Bighorn on a blistering June Sunday in 1876.
The Indians were camped over here and they were celebrating. They just completed an annual Sundance to the east here, a few miles, and they were out hunting and they were coming together for an annual social function where they sing and dance.
Many versions of one story. Here on another Sunday, on a hot summer day, told by Dale Goes Wartime's Kindness, a crow.
The United States Cavalry, under the direction of George Armstrong Custer, came over here and attacked a peaceful village of Sioux, Arapahoes, and Cheyennes. Basically, that's what happened in 1876 on that day. But the events leading up to it are controversial in many respects because of what different authors and so-called historians have analyzed as the results leading up to that assault on the Indians by the U.S. cavalry. Gold was discovered in the Black Hills, the sacred land of the Dakota people, and that was one of the driving forces behind the events that led up to the attack on the Indians in 1876. The Sioux resisted the government's attempts to take away the Black Hills because of the discovery of gold. They resisted orders and demands to get off of their ancestral homelands and to change their way of life. They mutilated and they dismembered infants, American Indian infants. They cut their arms and legs and heads off. They bashed in the heads of infants. The military did that. And civilians, citizens of this country did that to American Indians. And then they just twisted the story around, as is the style of some historians and non-Indians. That's what they want to believe, because they're trying to justify in their own mind that the shame that they did in the treatment of American Indians somehow can be justified. But no matter how hard they try, if they're true people, if they have any link to a God, they know that what they did to the American Indians was shameful and unforgivable, and they can't really accept that, so they have to twist things around and make it look like the Indian was a savage, when in fact the Indian was more of a peaceful creature of nature who lived in harmony with nature. And the story that American Indians continually scalped non-Indians and did horrible things, terrible mutilations to them. If that did in fact happen, and I'm not denying that it may have happened, but it was a result of what the non-Indian did to the American Indian first and foremost. And it was more like a response, and it was based on anger and love and emotionalism for the people that were massacred and mutilated and scalped.
Was Custer just a bad soldier that he seemed to led himself into this massacre? That's what it was?
I think he was misguided, and it just depends upon your own interpretation of history. In my view, from my understanding and reading, he was crazy.